Here to talk about week 3 of ELL Chat Book Club. We have been reading Boosting Achievement. We've been having unprecedented numbers of participants, and we're so excited at new names and faces that keep on coming up. So this week we're going to be talking about part 2. Some of the topics for tonight are growth mindset, grit, and social contracts, as opposed to set rules in the classroom that the teacher comes up with. We'll start with some introductions and then we'll get going. I am Dr. Katie Topple. I am an English language development teacher in an elementary school, and I'm also a adjunct professor for ESOL courses at Portland State University, and I am a co-founder of ELL Chat Book Club. Next, we will go to Shaylee. Welcome, Shaylee.
Hi, I'm Shaylee Santiago from Ames, Iowa. I'm an ESL instructional coach. Prior to that, I was a high school ESL teacher for, I don't know, a decade, something like that. In my spare time, I love to be on Twitter. I also participate with Mid-TESOL, the regional affiliate for TESOL in this area. So that's what keeps me busy. And I'm excited about this book and all the activity that we've been having on the chat. It's been really great this time.
And we appreciate you putting all of our tweets together for each week in, remind me, in Storify. Yes, I love that. And I love how this time there's different people popping up to volunteer to kind of take on different aspects of our chat, which is wonderful. I've been doing the questions, and then Shaylee's been doing Storify, and Carlota took the lead on doing the Flipgrid videos, which is so fun. And then we have a Padlet going. And so there's all these different avenues to reflect and hear explanations, and just kind of those different avenues allow people to do what's comfortable. So that's wonderful. Okay, next let's hear from Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Anderson, and I'm a K-5 elementary ESL teacher in Frisco, Texas. I've been doing this for about 10 years. Before that, I taught ARI, AMI, and before that, pre-K. So I'm excited to be a part of this group. I've been on Twitter for, it's been about 2 weeks now. So I'm just getting the hang of all of this, but I have been enjoying it this whole time. It's a great wealth of information for sure.
Well, we're glad to have you. I was very impressed that you're already integrated so much after having been on Twitter for such a short time. Okay, and then we'll go to Carol, who is the author of the book that we're reading.
Yes. Hi, I'm Carol Salva, and along with Anna Mattis, I wrote this book, Boosting Achievement, and I'm extremely proud of it. I'm really excited about it, and I have to thank the company that I work for, Seidlitz Education, because John Seidlitz just has this vision that if you work for him, he wants to help you become an author. And so I've been blessed to be able to put it down in print with some things that we tried over a couple of years when we really started to get onto some things that are working really well. And now the book study, what I'm super excited about is I'm honored that we're using the book for it. And I don't know why I'm sure every author would want to do this, because I'm learning so much, because I have like a window into everybody's classrooms, and everybody's bringing ideas about this subject and about technology and about other ways to motivate kids and all kinds of things. So I'm so appreciative of you, Katie and Ton, for letting us use this book this time.
I think what's so cool about our experience thus far in ELL Book Chat is that we've had authors engaging with us, and something you said in past weeks, Carol, spoke out to me, that you've been learning as a result of this. So the author of the book is taking away additional ideas about the content that you wrote about, because there's such a wealth of expertise and knowledge that kind of comes together on this chat, and everybody has different perspectives, and there's different just nuances based on people who live in different states. We were talking last week about how the definition of SIFE is not standardized throughout, that different states have kind of different wording and different inclusions in that definition. And so it's just so great to have this coming together of so many wonderful minds.
It is so many wonderful minds. And that's the thing that's inspiring to me, is because I left the classroom and I was a specialist. And then when I went back in the classroom, I had this, I don't know what to do. And I'm supposed to know what to do because I'm the specialist. And I feel like that's across education. A lot of people feel like they're supposed to already know everything about whatever. When we try to teach the students that a trial and error and fail forward and learn and keep learning. We say we want to be lifetime learners. And I would be skeptical of anyone, no matter what book they've written, that feels like they've got it all figured out.
Mhm.
Because we are constantly learning. Every year it's a new group of students, and everybody who's interacting, every single person in the chat has a perspective that I don't have. So why would you not? The smartest person in the room is the room. And that, I can't remember who tweeted that from the principal convention, but I was like, I hope those principals are listening, because that's the gold, really is your teachers. And how amazing that the teachers in our PLN are global. I mean, we're all over the place.
I really wish that map came together. It really did not.
I
I just had this vision of seeing all these little pins from across, around the globe, because truly there are, teachers from many
Laos
states, and then
and Canada.
different countries too. And actually, speaking of that, let's use that as a starting point, because in our PLN we're going global, and we're connecting with teachers and educators from around the globe. And so I'm curious, because one of the things this week mentions is having students engage in activities that are global. So you wrote about, Carol, how you connected with a classroom that was in a completely different state, and then your students were really flattered to know that these children that they don't even know are asking questions about them. So I'm curious to know what you all have done, in addition to Carol's example, to kind of, or ideas that maybe not necessarily something you've done, but ideas you have for how to engage students with other classrooms, or kids from maybe different states or different countries even, in order to kind of just make your classroom a global place, and in consequence of that, really honor differences and honor those different places and histories where people come from. Sarah or Shaylee, do you have any examples or ideas of things?
Well, I tried last year. I've had the pleasure the past few years of being a newcomer teacher for our summer school program. And so last year I taught 4th grade. The year before that I taught 2nd and 3rd grade. And so a few of my students actually went back to their home country after summer was over for the fall. And so I kept in touch with a lot of my students. I like to just check in with their parents just to see how things are going. And my goal was, I wanted to find a couple of students in different areas that we could connect with their classrooms, so that we could do Google Hangouts and those types of things. We could teach them about our culture. They could teach us about theirs. It ended up not working out very well because the timing with testing and all that kind of stuff, it just wasn't able to happen. But my goal this year is to get in on it early, so we're not in that testing season when there's just not a lot of time for that. And then hopefully we can make those connections happen. But last year I started doing something called Shine Time at the end of the day in summer school, where I let the kids sign up, and then they were able to have the floor for the last 20 or so minutes of class. And then they brought something from their culture that they would teach us, whether it was a game. Some of them taught us how to do origami and things with paper. Some of them taught us how to do a dance, those kind of things. And so I think that, even for those children who are still in their silent periods, I had one who I could not communicate with at all. She only spoke Portuguese, but she got up there and she played a song on her little instrument for us. And so we tried to do things like that just to kind of learn from each other. But that's all I've kind of had experience with so far.
But again, it's, we're talking about how sometimes our technology doesn't work. I think it's very important for teachers to model that sometimes things don't work out,
and that's fine.
That's fine. Okay, because that's modeling that failure is a learning experience, which is part of growth mindset.
Right.
Absolutely. And you're like, that's all I did. That's a lot, Sarah. That is, you honored every one of those kids. And I think it goes so far with families and kids that you wanted to connect. Even if you could never get the Google Hangout off the ground or whatever, the fact that my teacher cares about connecting with me and my family and trying that is half the benefit of doing it, is making sure that they know that that's such a culturally responsive thing that you even want to do that. So I'm so inspired, because I wasn't even thinking 4th grade, but I guess, you could go that's awesome.
What about you, Shaylee?
So I haven't been in the classroom for 4 years, I think it is. And just about the time I was leaving was when we went one-to-one at my school, meaning each of my students had a device. So that was
Nice.
my last year in the classroom, was the first year of one-to-one. So I was starting to do some, having students do some blogging. It didn't go very far, kind of like Sarah is saying, you have these grand ideas and they don't always materialize.
I have many.
I know some people have done a lot with that, and with the hashtag comments for kids, the number 4, that's a great way. I think that if I were teaching now, that would definitely be something I would do. Mystery Skype, I've never done it personally, but I have one of my Twitter friends who loves to do that and does it somewhat frequently in her classroom with all sorts of people from, you can do it from almost anywhere. I would love to do more with social media. I like I said, I didn't have a class Twitter account the last year that I was teaching, but that's something I think I would try to implement if I were back in, just because of those connections that you can foster literally around the world and, relatively easily. So the one thing I did do was country reports. So the students would talk about where they were from. And we actually had a series of like the travel guide books that they could use as a reference. And, at that point, people could use the computer lab and we could print off pictures or things like that. So that's one that I've done where it's like they're the expert and telling us a little about their country, but not really connecting them live or even asynchronously with people from other parts of the country. But kind of like Sarah was saying, there's such a diverse population that just sharing within your classroom can start to build some of those connections. So
I think that what's cool about all those ideas is just that they're very relevant. Oftentimes, and granted, I've never taught students who have cell phones. Well, they might, but they're not bringing them to school in elementary school. But I know there's a lot of high school level teachers who are, it's anti-technology, like you can't have your phone. And then there's the opposing view of, well, let's use it because that's what you're obsessed with. That's what you want to have. I mean, when I go to a class or a professional development, my phone's with me and I guarantee you I'm checking something while the presenter is talking because it's just what you're interested in. And so taking those things that students are interested in and engaged in, and then somehow making it connected to what you're teaching and an avenue to a legitimate audience is really cool. Like, even if it's at the end of the day and you say like, what was the greatest thing you learned today? And you have 3 students say what it was, and then you do the, hashtag comments for kids and tweet it out. They've got a global audience then for what they did. And so there's just a different level of connectedness to it because there is a legitimate audience. That's not just the teacher. There's other people out there. And then if you get a response, that's awesome. I didn't like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love the idea of that because when I first went back into the classroom, we knew we wanted to connect with an archaeologist that was going to come, and he was an African archaeologist. And somebody happened to tell me, that there was one at Rice University that was studying stuff from Africa. And I just thought that if he will come, this will really inspire my kids. And so he couldn't come for like 2 or 3 months. And that was actually such a blessing because, and this is something that people might think about if you want to use some technology, but super simple technology, like the cell phone in your pocket as a teacher, they wanted to ask them things, and a live Skype might not have worked out as beautifully as this did because it wasn't a Skype and it was all that prep time. And we made a video about it, but really they had authentic questions that they wanted to ask this guy when he came. And so we got those down and they just practiced and practiced. We gave them a frame. They worked with it. Then they wrote it. Then they took it home. And then they practiced the pronunciation. And the day he came, he sent me his PowerPoint ahead of time, and I embedded all these images in it. And, I told him that's just going to help. And he was like, that's great. He had the best time. He had so much fun because the kids asked their questions and we applauded the kids. You know what I mean? Like, instead of applauding the speaker. And so we've done more and more of that because I saw the beauty in not being live sometimes. The kids having the opportunity to practice, and then all the English that comes with an authentic question. I remember Emmanuel's question was, I want to be a doctor someday. how did you become an archaeologist? And then he was in the library. I want to be a doctor someday. How did you become a librarian? I want to be a doctor, and then he's the principal, and he's getting all this information from, you know what I mean? From day, anyway. I thought that was cool. And also we've sent messages back and forth now to like Emily Francis's class and people who played that Kahoot of ours that are not live, but it's an authentic audience. It's meaningful.
Something, I mean, this was no technology, and well, actually a little bit, but it was a traditional letter writing. But my third graders, the same class, they're now going to be fifth graders. So 2 years ago, we did a unit on jobs and what they wanted to be. And so we went through how to ask questions and the difference between a closed question and an open question, so that when you ask the question, you get good information. And then they wrote letters to somebody in the field. And I kind of did the homework of picking somebody, and some were local and some were some happened to be celebrity. And it was so exciting because we got letters back. One boy wrote to an archaeologist at a Oregon university, and he asked for a fossil, and he got a little something in his envelope, and he was so excited. Another 2 girls wanted to be bakers. And so we wrote to a local baker at a cupcake shop who wrote back. And then we also wrote to Bakerella. I don't know if you guys know who Bakerella is, but she's like the queen of cake pops. She has a blog, and she's pretty, if you like to bake, Bakerella. And she wrote back.
Oh,
and
my God.
She's famous. And one boy wanted to be a mechanic. And so he really likes the show Gas Monkeys, which is, I don't know what network it's on, but I've seen it. My husband's watched it, and they fix up cars. They buy them at auctions and fix them. And so we wrote to one of the guys on the show, and he wrote back, and it was just like, I could have cried. It was amazing. And it was a handwritten letter and talking about, and he gave my student like a little, I don't know, it was this decal or something. And it was just a treasure to him. He was so excited. And then a soccer player from our local Portland Timbers, who was an adult ELL. And he wrote this long letter back, and it was just so exciting. The downside was that even though I had prearranged with everybody and asked, will you write a letter back, because I didn't want kids to get disappointed.
Not everybody did.
Not everybody got one back. And the one student who's just the one that I will do anything for, he didn't get a letter back. He wanted to be a National Geographic explorer. And I wrote through their website and had somebody say, write to this person, and he's agreed, and he never wrote back. And we then sent the letter again, and I even tweeted at him because he's on Twitter, and never got a response. And so that was disappointing. You can't guarantee, I guess, that everybody would, but for the kids that did get letters back, it was so exciting because they really had this authentic person answering their questions, because I can't really tell them what they need to do in order to be a National Geographic explorer, or what they need to do to become a professional baker, or internet sensation baker, or whatever it is that they want. But these professionals really could, and it was so special that they went above and beyond and sent kind of little treasures for the students, and they will always remember that. It was just really, really exciting for them, and it's just that authentic audience.
Authentic audience, and honoring those kids too, their real questions. Sarah, you hit that within your classroom, just the sharing back and forth and honoring those kids getting up and doing it, breaking out of their shell a little bit. That's gold. That's amazing. There's so many different things. We're talking about growth mindset, but it plays into how they feel about what they bring to the table.
Yeah.
They bring
speaking of growth mindset, I'm excited to talk about growth mindset. If you don't mind, I want to start with one of our fun activities that we did. So my partner and I decided to co-teach for this unit, and she had the level 1s and 2s, and I had the 3s and 4s, but we decided that it would be kind of exciting to try to integrate those groups and then have two teachers. And that was the first time we'd ever tried that. We had never co-taught before, but we were good friends and worked well together. So we just kind of jumped in. This was before I read Andrea's book, before I really knew anything about legitimate co-teaching, but it was us working and planning together. And so we each took on the persona of one of us was fixed mindset and the other was growth mindset. And so this was like our plain black beanie. That was the fixed mindset of like the downer, you know, like, I can't do anything. I'm going to quit. I'm not good at this. I'm not smart. And then this wasn't the hat, but she had this big hat with all these colorful flowers on it. And then that was the growth mindset, like the person who was so just positive and I can try and I can do this. And that was a really good like visual for the kids of the difference between this person who is so fixed and so down on their abilities and what they can do and what they're willing to try versus this person who is really open to, you know, failing and trying again and kind of overcoming things that are hard and realizing that there are different avenues to get to the same place and that it's not like you're born dumb or you're born smart. It's has a lot to do with the way that you approach things, and not just the effort. I think it was pointed out, quoting Carol Dweck, that it's not just about effort, but it's about realizing that there are different strategies and different ways to approach tasks so that you can succeed, and that failing is a way to learn how to succeed. Because when you fail, okay, that didn't work, so we're going to put that aside and let's try something different. And we did a lot of skits where the teachers would model those two, you know, the way that each of those mindsets would talk. And then we had the kids role play and come up with set statements. And Angela Watson's unit on growth mindset had some really good printable pages for your wall that you could put that had the fixed mindset statement crossed out and then the growth mindset written, so that students know, instead of saying, I can't do that, I quit, they can say something like, you know, I'm not able to do that yet, but I'm going to keep trying. And that took a lot of practice, because for a lot of students, that fixed mindset was where they were. And there's a little kind of like, not a quiz, but a little checklist there where they would rate how they felt about a statement. And a lot of them would say like, yeah, people are born dumb. And they felt that way. And I think they felt that way about themselves. Like, I'm not smart. And so it took a lot of talking and role playing to kind of have them realize that shift of, I can do this, but not yet. And that's why I tweeted out this week about that powerful word yet. You know, it's not that I can't, it's just I can't do it yet. And adding that, my colleague did a whole bunch of statements at the beginning of the year on a bulletin board. And it was all of these things that students couldn't do. And then that word yet, you know, I can't do my 9 times table yet, or I can't whatever, you know, anything that they felt in school like they were struggling with. And that was a really powerful visual display too, because it just showed them that they would get there. You know, it's not definitive that they can't, it's just a matter of time and work of where they would go with it. And then we had our song, which we sung. And then come to find out that group of students didn't really love my songs. But we loved our song.
I love your song already.
Pretty good. So the thing that's tricky about songs is that you pick a song that's popular at the time, and then it may not be popular anymore. So it kind of becomes, I don't know, obsolete, or you have to redo it. But this is to the tune of Happy by Pharrell, because it was around the time that the Minions movie came out. Do you guys know that song? Because I'm happy, whatever, you know, clap your hands. Okay. So I'm going to try to say the lyrics slow. And as my music teacher pointed out when I sang my Moana thank you song at the end of the year, I cannot stay on tone, and I don't have the right pitch. Which I totally admit.
Music teacher.
I feel like I'm a terrible singer, but I'm good with the lyrics. So focus on the lyrics, not my voice. So it goes like this. And I'll try to remember the motions, but I don't remember them all. It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. We're going to train our brains to think a different way. A fixed mindset says that I cannot change. A growth mindset says I can change my brain because I'm awesome. Clap along if you believe in your abilities. Because I'm awesome. Clap along if you believe in all the possibilities. Because I'm awesome. Clap along if you keep trying and you never quit. Because I'm awesome. Clap along if you persevere until you get it. My brain grows dendrites when I write and read. Neuron connections help me to succeed. My brain has neuroplasticity resulting from my curiosity. Because I'm awesome, clap along if you believe in your abilities. Because I'm awesome, clap along if you believe in all the possibilities. Because I'm awesome, clap along if you keep trying and you never quit. Because I'm awesome, clap along if you persevere until you get it. When a setback comes, I take 2 steps back, but my growth mindset helps get me back on track. When I fail or make a mistake, feedback helps me learn to make it great. And then the chorus one more time.
Yay!
That was awesome.
Seriously, it was awesome.
That took a lot of time to write that with my colleague. Shout out to Patty Grahalish. She's not on Twitter, but she did that.
I love, well, first of all, it's very catchy and it's very cute, and you undersell it quite a bit because I want the script. And I just think it would be such a fun thing for them, even my kids, to be tracking the print. But you used what I did too, even though your kiddos were what grade?
3rd.
Yeah, you got 3rd grade. And I had kids who are pre-literate, learning to read in any language. But still, the fact that I did what you did, we used dendrites, neuroplasticity. They need to know. You don't change that and adapt that down because they can get that. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so great.
And also there's the repetition too. So once they kind of get it, the chorus repeats 3 times so they can kind of learn
and
that.
What about the hand signals? What about the hand signals and everything, the total physical response that you were using?
And we started every class singing that and
that's
just practicing it. So it was that repetition. And sometimes we said, okay, it's going to be the boys that do it or the girls that do it, or stand up if you want to volunteer. Like if you think you know all the words and you can do it and jam out by yourself. It was fun. I think the teachers liked it more than the kids, but I think that it did help them to learn the concepts because, there it is. But now I don't know how popular that song is now. I don't know if kids would recognize the tune. We may have to do a new one.
And
or show the Minions, because Minions are still relevant, right? Isn't there another Minion movie coming out?
Yeah.
You're good.
You're good.
I think for high school, I would have my high school students write a song, write words to a tune. Or maybe even, I was just remembering back, I used to have them do a poster. It was a different topic, but, so give them a couple different options. Here's growth mindset. How would you do almost like a public service announcement? So older students for sure could easily take some of those same concepts and put it to whatever tune that they would pick.
And then you might find out that so-and-so plays the guitar and can play along. And then another person might play the ukulele or might do, and then you could actually, kind of notice students who have musical talent. I had one student who was a 2nd grader and he just shined whenever we did music. We did a song on Community. That one was from the Lego movie where it's everything is awesome. So I made a community song about that. And there was motions of like, everything is awesome when you're in a community. And he would rock out when we sang it. And he was otherwise a pretty shy student and he had some speech issues, but it was just so fun to see him really shine in that moment. And all the kids recognize that he was a rock star in that moment. And that was fun. So I think not only is music good for the learning piece, but it's also good to kind of let some kids shine who may not traditionally shine. They may have a good voice, unlike me, and be able to show that off. Or like I said, an instrument or just, something that they can connect with. Because in a lot of cultures, music is very, very important.
And we could have them, Shaylee said about a poster, I really think I'm going to try to get my kiddos quickly on Padlet because it's so easy and we can share it as a class. So having them find things they want to add to a growth mindset Padlet. I have a struggle at the beginning of the year because the expectation is that kids have their Gmail account and our school is, they have an account and the Google, everything is connected to it. And I have students who've never done anything on the internet, and so, but goodness gracious, they pick it up fast.
I think also I've had presenters use Padlet as a back channel during presentations as a kind of a place to post questions and comments. And that would be cool too, that if students, the teachers presenting something, and if students have a question, they could, have it function kind of like a parking lot and ask what they don't know. And then other students could possibly respond if you opened it up and gave those permissions. On our Padlet, somebody posts an idea about how to get to know their students, and other people can say, oh, I love that idea, or I did it this way, and respond back. And so it's another way to kind of make the community interact with each other based on the content that's being presented.
Yeah, we're learning some cool stuff in the book chat.
Makes me sad because I did have one-on-one iPads, and I think they're being taken away. So,
I want to say something about that, because I run into teachers all the time that say, well, my kids don't have technology. We don't have one-to-one, and we don't have this, we don't have that. And I understand that, but I don't know about you guys. Does anybody else work in a low socioeconomic area, or have part of your district that's very low socioeconomic? I've worked in some schools, and like I said, I'm working right now with people who are coming to the country with nothing. They come with nothing. But even those families generally will, most of them, not all, but most will get a phone that might cost, very little money because it doesn't have any service. It doesn't have any Wi-Fi or data, so it's a cheapy phone. But if they get to McDonald's or Starbucks or in the school, then they have Wi-Fi. And this is how they communicate with their family back on another continent. People are like, they're on Facebook. Facebook is free, and Facebook is how they are connected to their family. So, and that phone, I'd like to take your phone away for a while and see, how that feels. It's like they would I read about in refugee camps where they would go without eating for a while to get enough money to get one of these cheap phones so that they could communicate. Anyway, all of that to say, I feel like for my group, I want this year, we just had to figure out a way where phones were totally fine in class. The social contract, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that was part of it, because they need it for translation. They need it. We have internet if you have a device. And there's a couple of things that I think my population sometimes leaves very quickly. They're just here for a few weeks. So I want to give them some free apps and free tools that even if they only spent a day or two in my classroom, they have a way to keep learning no matter where they land. There's too much stuff out there right now. Duolingo, Khan Academy, and different things that you can say, you know what, make sure you bookmark these. And wherever you go, you can learn as fast as you want to learn at least basic skills to get yourself into reading.
That reminds me, and I just want to make a note of this before we move on to talking about what did we say we're going to talk about? Classroom
social contracts and stuff.
Social contracts. I've had teachers contact me because I've had one-to-one iPads for several years, and I've had teachers contact me and say, can you suggest some apps for newcomers? But they want like an app that, I don't know, just that teaches the language. Like they want to sit that student
like Rosetta Stone, like
something like that.
In isolation, just learn English words and English phrases.
And I think it's just really great that we're discussing ideas that truly engage students in, grade level academic work or the content in there. It's not just a device to set them aside and say, kind of play these games and try to learn some skills. It's really engaging them. And yes, they're learning literacy, but there are other ways, like with translation. Somebody this week posted, was it Tan, posted something about a translating tool, and I haven't looked at it yet, but it looked
for the parents to talk
interesting.
To the parents.
Yes. So, there's lots of ways that you can use technology that's not just that babysitter because, well, this student doesn't have the skills to engage with the class. Therefore, I'm giving an app so that they can work independently.
And it doesn't have to be not that like Duolingo, I think, is a fantastic app like that, just for teaching basic language, and it's gamified and they love it, but they don't need to do that in my class, right? Because we have these units of study that are compelling, that I'm hoping that they're engaging in. But I'm not saying that they can't use them. In fact, I make sure everybody has them, Because when you're standing in line at the grocery store, or when you're in the mall, or when you're at home, if nothing else, you can be doing that. They do need to build skills, and and then they sometimes get excited about it. So then they will do that to get, to build some skills, because they just start getting on a roll with learning. You want them to have as many tools in their tool belt as they can. But I totally agree. My district had spent tons of money on Rosetta Stone, and it's a fantastic tool. If you're going to go to Germany and you need to learn German, it's very effective. There's no question. But we're trying to do more than just teach you English.
I'm laughing because I actually did try Rosetta Stone while I lived in Germany.
Oh yeah, did it work?
And I struggled so much because my pronunciation of the word Auf Wiedersehen, I can't say it. I can't say it yet. I struggle, and you had to say that at the end of each lesson to move forward. And I struggled, and there's like a little kind of meter that tells you like that it lights up green if you did it, and it goes,
you even remember.
So I would be like, I did the whole lesson, I did fine, I learned the words, and then it would be time to say goodbye, and I'd be like, Auf Wiedersehen, Auf Wiedersehen, Auf Wiedersehen, and I couldn't move, and I got so irate, like, no, why? Because in truth, people maintain accents, and you don't necessarily say the word perfectly, but it's that comprehensible input. If somebody can understand you and negotiate for meaning, if it's not perfect, who cares? But I struggled with
surely there's a balance. There's a balance between those things. Do you guys use anything like that before we move on, Shaylee and Sarah? Anything like
we do. My district uses Imagine Learning for our elementary friends, and then I believe they still use Rosetta Stone for secondary, but we did use Rosetta Stone for elementary and learned pretty quickly that it just wasn't holding their attention quite as much, and so we switched to Imagine Learning, which is a little bit more, it's got high engaging videos and games that they play and stuff like that, just to kind of help them along as they're building their language. But just like you guys are saying, it's the same thing. We see it as a supplement. The last thing we want is for students to come in and be sitting in a corner playing Imagine Learning for 4 hours a day. We want them to be interacting with the other students whenever they feel comfortable doing that. So it is just to be used as a supplement.
Yeah, I've heard about that, but I've never seen it firsthand. I should look into it.
Yeah.
In my district, we've had Rosetta Stone. We're actually piloting Imagine Learning right now. Another one we had previously, Mango Languages.
Oh, I've heard good things.
Through your public library. So now my public library here in Ames has subscription. So we aren't paying for it as a school district anymore. But yeah, we're still trying to find, and kind of like you said, to find something that works well K-12. It seems it's either more kind of elementary or secondary that it appeals to the most. So
I love when we find those things to supplement their language, because a lot of kids want that. They want, where can I learn just the basics in as fast as possible? And I love when they want something to take home. We encourage them to show their parents. And if you've got Mango, is it called Mango Learning? And
Mango Languages.
Mango Languages, and it's the public library, and then the parents will get familiar with the public library and all of that. It's just a beautiful thing. So I'm definitely not down on language software. I just think we have an opportunity in our classrooms during our time to go be at grade level or beyond when we have the kiddos. And it seems to me that accelerates their language more than anything, because they're just compelled to participate, and there's so much cool stuff you can do when you do that.
I want to say one more thing about growth mindset before we move on to talk about social contracts. One thing I thought of that connects back to boosting achievement is those kind of stories of success that really help students to connect with this idea of, I do have grit and I can achieve these things. What, in my experience, when you kind of look to the available videos on YouTube that show that, the examples are like Michael Jordan, who got cut from the basketball team, Steve Jobs, and my students were like, who? They didn't connect with those people. So I think that some of the other, finding individuals whose stories speak to your students is very important. And I like how I mean, several people shared their stories. Carlota shared a picture of her when she was young as an ESL student, and Emily has shared her story, and Tan's forward. All of those stories are, I mean, I almost want to start telling those stories to my students, because those, I mean, I'm like, I would say, these are my friends. These are
And you know what, Katie, just like you were saying at the beginning, they will talk to your class.
Mhm.
Emily wrote my kids back a long thing, and we made videos back and forth, and she was Saif. So to see her, that she's a Fab 5 teaching channel teacher, you know, they get this real confused look, like, how does that happen? We're like, well, let's ask her. And guess what? She writes a blog, so let's read it. And then they want to so badly read it. And it's so fantastic. I think I started a Padlet with stories like that, because the circuit, who else was saying, somebody was saying last week, that was you, Shaylee, right? What were you saying about using the circuit and Francisco Jimenez?
Oh, I when I used that with my high school students, I used it every year that I was teaching. It was always a big hit with them, and they could really connect. Even though my population, I always have some Spanish speakers, but that's not the predominant.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
You know, students from Asian countries, and we have a handful from Europe and Africa. They all really loved reading his stories.
Can you tell people what it is real quick for anybody watching that doesn't know?
Yeah, so the circuit, Francisco Jimenez, he writes about his family as migrant workers in California, and actually he was undocumented for a time, and so at the end of the book, he has to go back to Mexico. And then there's 3 sequels after that. The 4th one just came out recently. So he tells his life story going on from there. So
it's heartbreaking, because it's from a kid's point of view, and he's missing the first few months of school every year because of the lifestyle, and how hard it is for him when he goes in not speaking English. But you know what? He's a PhD now, and a writer, and talking, I mean, just one of the leaders in education. And
you can get parts of it. Well, I think it's all available bilingual, but there's also a picture book about one of the stories, the Christmas story, I think is what it's called. And La Mariposa is one that I think you can find it, just that chapter, because it's a collection of short stories is what the circuit is.
I haven't read it. I hadn't heard of it. I want to.
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, West Ed does it. They do QTEL training here in Texas and other places, and they always use that as an example of a compelling piece of text. If you're going to do nonfiction and things like that, that Padlet, I would almost say, Shaylee, we're high school teachers. The link that I put on the Padlet for teachers is an NBC News story about him. I would almost do that with my kids, because, you know, we can do the stories, and we probably will, but let's read about, you know, and again, you can read any level text with any reader if you read it to them. And we'll do more of that in the last parts of the book. But, you know, you're just making your content comprehensible, and they're gaining sight words while they're compelled to follow this guy's story. So I think it'd be cool.
A video on the author's website that I have access to through a consortium thing. I can't think what it's called right now, but sometimes I've shown little clips from that. And one part that he talks about, one reason he wrote the book is he realized students need to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. It's this whole thing about we need diverse literature. Before that was a big deal. So
absolutely. And you know what, that Padlet, there's already like 4 or 5 things on there. There's Emily Francis' story. There's a podcast with Tan. If for people who don't have the book, he tells his story on a podcast. There's Francisco Jimenez. There's you know, I don't know, a couple of other inspiring things. We could open that to the kids. It doesn't have to be just a teacher resource. You know, they could go through. What were you gonna say, Sarah?
Well, I was just going to say that I have a collection of fiction resources that I keep for my students. Like I saw in Shaylee's little picture, she's reading Inside Out and Back Again, right? And books like that, and Esperanza Rising, and My Name is Yoon, and, you know, picture books even. Oh, have y'all heard about My Name is Jorge? I flat out cried in front of my summer school class reading that. It's a book of poetry in Spanish and English, but it tells these stories that are just heartbreaking. And those are things that we've started to collect and make a Google spreadsheet so that all the teachers can go on there and just kind of find what they're needing for their classroom and their specific needs. But I think it's good. I found out about My Name is Yoon from one of my second grade teachers who got a new child from Africa who didn't speak either language. He was completely nonverbal, but she was trying to open up the lines of communication with the rest of her class on how to handle the situation with this new student that they weren't able to communicate with. And just watching her read the story and just break down in tears, it was precious. But those kind of stories I find very encouraging for the kids.
One of the books I don't know where I put it. It might be upstairs, but the book that I've talked about, Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching and Learning by Shiraki Holly, one of the appendices has all, it kind of divides it by a few different cultural groups and then by age windows. So it's kind of like, if you are maybe, I can't remember if it's like I think it's K5 and then maybe 6 on up or something like that. But it has a whole list of books that are about those particular cultural groups. So it's a really great resource to kind of, as a baseline to find books that might connect with certain students. If you have a new student and they happen to be, from Asia, you might be able to look through that list and find a book that really takes place in their home country. And then just by sharing that with them, they know that you care because you're making sure that they've got something that feels, that shows them rather than kids and families that don't really look like them.
Right.
Yeah. That's so important.
What was the name of the book you said?
Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching and Learning.
Okay.
And the author's last name is Holly, Hollie. And that literally the appendices of that book alone are worth their weight in gold. They're amazing. There's a whole bunch of ways to kind of, what are they called? I guess engagement structures. And it gives a description of when and why you should use it. Kind of like, if you're reviewing for a test, this might be appropriate. Or if you want students to get to know each other, this would be appropriate. And it's things kind of like the inner outer circle or 4 corners, those kind of things. But it's just this whole appendices with lots of interactive activities. And then there's also culturally responsive management strategies, attention signals and things like that. I mean, that's just the appendices, not any of the content of his book, which is also great, but that's another solid resource that's very helpful.
Good.
I have another one that I'd like to share with you guys. I don't know if you've seen these before, but they're in the book stack that I tweeted that I'm reading. Green Card Voices, and these two are both youth voices out of Twin Cities. One is specifically St. Paul, the other is Minneapolis. They also have done one on Fargo, North Dakota, which I didn't get, but there were people from this organization that came to a conference I attended earlier in the summer. And what it is, it's just 25 stories written by students who are at this high school from around the world. So here's the map of the Green Card Youth Voices from Minneapolis. And then it's a little profile about them and kind of what their story was about coming to the U.S., what's been difficult for them. And so
that's beautiful too.
It's a little 2-page thing, 3 pages at the most. I think they've also made videos, and I haven't explored that a lot yet, but this is one I'm going to put my tweet to answer with a book snap with more details, but definitely you should look for those if you haven't seen them before.
I have not. Cool.
Even as an idea for your classroom, to have your students kind of create your own classroom book, because unfortunately it wasn't until Tailpass Writing Time that my kids started writing about their experience with moving to a new country. And I said, guys, people would spend money to read this that good. So to be able to kind of put something together that you could create and then make copies of for all of them to take. I mean, there might even be a way to publish it. I don't know enough about that.
Well, even with apps like Book Creator, you can publish.
Yeah.
And I've never done it, but I think there are ways that you can publish and then give your Book Creator creations to other people. Other people could access them.
I'll have to look into that.
Which again is that authentic audience, is knowing that it's not just for your classroom or your teacher, it's for other people to read. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I get a question a lot about what if you only have a few sight kids in your class? or a few newcomers, and the rest of them know a little more English. And I think those kinds of things where you teach or you offer a lesson that definitely your top 25% can do, and then kids work in cooperative groups, where you have one of those kids in each group, and the newcomer has an oral story to tell, even if it's in their own language, and that group will figure out how to get that kid's story down. We get to give them enough credit, and that they can, work together to put something together to put into a book like that. And I think that's a cool way, because they care about their own stories so much.
Yes.
And they should, and they're valuable. And just like you're saying, Sarah, once they start telling them, we're always just so blown away.
Yes.
I think I waited too long last year to do that. And it was so phenomenal. Like you said, in the second semester, like, oh, we need them to get more English. I'm just going to try to push that earlier in the year too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's talk about social contracts. Sarah and Shaylee, what's your experience with or ideas about social contracts as opposed to kind of the teacher presenting the rules and saying, this is how you operate in my classroom? What do you guys want to share about that?
I'll let Shaylee go first on this one.
Do you have any experience with that? Because I didn't before I went and saw this guy that I write about in the book.
Yeah, I haven't actually used exactly that. I was trying to remember how I didn't have a list of rules per se, and I remember we did discuss to some degree about it, but I didn't set it up quite either one of those ways exactly. Best as I can recall right now, I think I often I had students create little books about different rules, like computer use. So we got one-to-one computers, right? So that was a big deal. What are the rules? What you can do, what you can't, how you're supposed to handle it. So I had a student who took pictures and made a book of, remember you're supposed to charge it at home every night, and remember to keep it in the case, and some of those kind of things. And so it wasn't really, I mean, those were dictated to us of what they were going to be, but I had the students presenting that information in a way that made sense to them. So that's the closest that I can say I came to doing something like that.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah?
Well, for mine, usually with my class, I have the kids kind of do their brainstorming on sticky notes, and I have them just kind of think of some ideas of what they want our classroom to look like, what are the things that are important to them, and then I have them collect them all on the whiteboard, and then we go through them and just kind of like have a discussion about what we want our classroom to look like, and then we kind of group them together according to which ones are similar, and kind of the main themes that emerge from that, and then from there we kind of make our own classroom norms that the kids all agree to, which are usually the normal three of, wanting to be safe and treat others with respect, and, kind of be ready to learn and have that kind of attitude. But we've been doing a lot of talk lately about with the technology involved, and digital citizenship and how that looks, just as far as what the kids are learning to share and not share, and those kind of things. I haven't figured out how to tie all of that together to create something formal, so I'm interested to see what ideas y'all have.
I just love the questions, the prompts on page 47. How do you want to be treated by your peers? How do you think your peers want to be treated by you? How do you want to be treated by the teacher? And how do you think your teacher wants to be treated by you? I mean, I think those are really relevant questions. At my school, we have school rules. It's be kind, be safe, be responsible. And those are school-wide. So those are kind of the classroom rules too by default. That's just what students are expected to do everywhere. But I think these really tap into, students as people, as human beings. And culturally, there are differences of how you might show respect or disrespect. And so getting everybody on the same page, I think, is important. Eye contact is one of those things that I want my students looking at me, but in some cultures, downcast eyes is showing respect. And if I don't know that, then there's going to be that disconnect. And so you do need to be on the same page. Yeah.
Those questions give you the opportunity to really talk through all of that. And we should give credit. I'm sure, I don't know that they invented social contracts, but the guy, Joseph Maurer, who I first saw it, and then I started seeing it everywhere, he had a training by called Capturing Kids' Hearts, and we give credit to them here in the book. And it's flipping group here in Texas. And but I heard somebody on Australia radio talking about social contracts and social contracts throughout history. But I was in a kindergarten classroom where the kindergartners had come up with a social contract. And when I walked in and we were visitors observing, and two little ambassadors came over and met us at the door and said, "I'm sorry, can you come with us? Can you read these? Are you okay with all of this? If you're okay with all of this, you have to sign our social contract to be in here." And we were like, okay. And, you know, these little 5-year-olds. And she's like, "But you got to put it on a Post-it note because you're just a visitor." And so we had to sign our name on a Post-it note put it on their social contract. I mean, that's how much the kids, one of those things said, "We don't make our friends bleed." And we were like, okay, we're down with that. But I mean, it was noted. But it was so impressive too, that the kids had spent, it's not just anything that people run through that do it well either. Because I watched Joseph, and he takes, this is something that may take several class periods or several days, because it's not just be respectful. What does that look like? And when we're passing out materials, if you throw a book at somebody, but he doesn't feed that to any of the kids. He's like, okay, so let's get up and pass out materials and see what that would look like. And how do you want those passed out to you? And how do you want them put back? And how does that make you feel when somebody tosses it at you? And there's just all this conversation, and then they get up and go sit with somebody else and have that conversation again, and then they get up and sit with somebody else, and nothing goes up on that. And nothing goes even on the dry erase board until everybody is in agreement. And it's not that it's a magic bullet, because I'm telling you what, a week later they're breaking the social contract. But you go over to it. First of all, it was a fantastic thing to read and practice our reading every day. But it's a living document that we can change any time that you guys want to change it, because they're not my rules. They're your norms. One issue we had with it this year was our Muslim girls were getting super offended, because I don't know about you guys, but the first words that some kids learn are curse words in their new language, especially in high school, middle school. But some of the girls, they were just so, I mean, it was just such a huge deal to them to be hearing these words. Even if they were in Spanish, they knew that the kids were cursing, and it had to go on the social contract. But we had to make sure that everybody, was okay with, you speak however you want with your friends, with your guy friends out on the, whatever. That's maybe a cultural thing, but how do y'all want to feel in here? And we had to keep going back to that one over and over and over again. But pretty soon it went away. Not pretty soon. After a while, it went away.
Yeah.
It just works so much better than us just telling them no cursing in here. Like, let's talk about how that makes other people feel. And we know that it just slips out because it's a habit, or you think that's a fun word, but they talk about it. So I'm down with it. The thing too is that later, especially that group that was so rambunctious and so hostile toward each other and fighting, and then learned to work together so well, that they attribute it all to the social contract.
That's awesome.
They're like, that's what did it. That helped them learn to work together. And once they could work together, anything was possible after that.
I was thinking of possibly adding this to something that I already have in place. I use a GLAD strategy called Scout, where one person is kind of in charge of monitoring the group in order to see who is, following the expectations or whatever it might be. And then at the end of the class, they get to award them with my classroom kind of currency. And they have to say it in a complete sentence. We have an anchor chart that tells the different things that I'm looking for or that they're looking for. And I feel like that kind of gives them ownership of, the things I have on there are used vocabulary words. They're very academic things, like tried their best, shared good ideas, worked well with their partner. But that might be either a second opportunity to award, it's not, those social contract things aren't going to go on that same chart because they're different, but it might be, you get to award a second. I use brain bucks, and they might get to award a second brain buck to somebody who demonstrated, really those social contract attributes or something like that. And that's a good way to reinforce it, that that's how we close class every day, that the person who is the scout gets to say, well, I'm giving the brain buck to X because she, and then calling out specifically what that person
That's
did.
cool. That would be cool.
They love to have their turn, and they love to give out. And then also the way I do the brain bucks, I think I talked about this. I don't think it was in one of these Google Hangouts. It was in my Virtual presentation. The way I started it was that every student has a library pocket with just their name. And when they earn 10 brain bucks, they could turn them in for a prize. And then after I heard Zaretta Hammond speak, she said that having students do things kind of collectively makes it more culturally responsive. And so I kind of switched up and I said, you can put your brain buck in your individual pocket and you can get a prize after 10, or we're going to collectively decide on something that you're working towards and the price. And then you have an option to put your brain buck in the class envelope. And students totally shifted because we would talk together. Well, what do you want? What's going to be fun for you? And some groups wanted a technology party. Some groups wanted, my second graders wanted to do art and bring stuffed animals. And one group wanted to watch a video and bring stuffed animals and eat popcorn. And another group wanted root beer floats. And we would kind of, depending on how much I wanted them to work by the end, my fourth graders needed 350 brain bucks to get the prize versus the younger kids needed maybe 100. But we would tally them every day. So there was math involved and count by fives of how many we had, how many do we need, and things like that. And they loved it. And it's hard to give up those minutes at the end of ELD because I have 30 minutes with them and every single minute is precious. But those kind of things were kind of, group oriented and helped everybody to feel like we're all working towards the same goal. And it's a goal that you guys agreed upon that you want. And then whenever they earned it, that next day was just dedicated to that celebration. And so there wasn't, if there's always talking, so that's language related, but it's not my lesson today. It's your chance to celebrate what you've earned. And that was something I would definitely continue, but I like adding that social contract piece to it and kind of making that an addition to the system already in place.
That sounds awesome.
I was just thinking, how could you integrate growth mindset in the social contract?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, asking them questions about, just adding questions about it or guiding. What do you think?
One of the things I put on my anchor chart was positive self-talk because I heard a student do it. I was like, oh, that's a great thing. We have to add that. And then I don't really think that was something they connected with. So I think they would need more examples. And because aside from doing that specific unit with third graders 1 year, I didn't really continue growth mindset stuff. And I'm thinking now for next year that needs to be part of every grade level,
right?
Throughout, yeah.
And one of the things we do a lot, and it's the text that they read from day one, is this. It's in the next part, I think, or the part after the last part. We do something called language experience approach, where we have an experience together and then they they popcorn out about it, but I'm modeling correct English. It's a shared writing thing. And so then we have an anchor chart that everybody can read because we went through it one sentence at a time. We created it, we co-created it. And the first things that we're doing are growth mindset. We watch a video of Hefsan and he's in this chapter, I think, or maybe we would watch it now about Emily Francis or whomever, and we do a compare and contrast. How are we like them? How are our goals the same? And those anchor charts, there's the social contract is the first, what to say instead of I don't know is the first anchor chart we create together. And then the social contract, and then it becomes, how are we like this guy? And then suddenly they have, more than one piece of text that they can read every night to be building phonemic awareness, but it's also reinforcing a growth mindset because we're learning about it. Like the stuff that you had. The other thing that's cool about the social contract to me is that we do have a revolving door of kids all year long. Some kids stay all year, but we have many kids come all the way up to the end. And we have an ambassador that shows them the social contract when they come in, but we also go over it as a class. We explain it to the newcomer and we tell them, you don't have to tell me today, but think about this because you are just as much a member of this class as everybody else. And if you want to change it, if you want to change any part of it, we would change it because we have to have everybody in agreement. And so, it's a way to bring a new person, even if they don't want to change anything about it, which they generally don't, but we have had some kids challenge some things.
Well, one of the things that I started doing was an effort rubric. And I know you talked about effort in the book, and I'm starting to rethink a couple of things that I've done. But that's something that I felt like I could reward my students on, because no matter what level of language they were on, they all could, that's something they could control. And so we did the 1 through 4 system. A 3 was my expectation. A 4 was going over and above what I asked them to do. And so those were the kids that, I would have them reflect at the end of the day. What level do you think you were working on today? Is there something you could have done to work, more on a level 4 effort so that you were pushing yourself a little bit more? And what can you do next time to make sure you hit that level 4 effort? And so anytime I saw a kid that was doing, I said I wanted you to write a paragraph, but you wrote 2. Here you go. Get something for that as a way of showing me that you're
I think that's great. That's great. It's that we're not supposed to be saying you're so smart. We're supposed to be saying things like that, like you work really hard, you're figuring it out. It's fantastic.
I have a friend again. This is my 3-year-old friend, Sammy. You want to come and say hi? You want to wave? Here, come here, be on the screen. Wave and say hello.
Hi, Sammy.
So I think once again, now that it's past 7, I need to bow out for bedtime. But I'm excited because we've done so much reflecting that this is actually just the first day of our 3rd week. So we get to continue to talk about all these things for the whole week on Twitter and have people react in Flipgrid and Padlet and all those other fun ways.
Yeah, get this link to this because I just tweeted it out and tagged you guys. If you find these things that you're talking about in these resources, see if you can put this video also with it. If you have enough characters so that people see, oh, they talked about this. I guess there's a show out there somewhere. They could fast forward through some of us. I don't care. But at least they know it's out there, and at least it's a good model of what people can do to connect over a book. And I think that's fantastic. I appreciate you guys so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I think if I stop, then we're done, right? Because I'm the one who started it this week. Okay. Well, yes, thank you for joining. And absolutely, like Carol said, tweet everything out. Any resources you mentioned, the books you talked about, Shaylee, the Green Card Youth Voices, tweet that out if you haven't already. Sarah, I loved your idea about Shine Time. Tweet that out. That's awesome. That's a fun way to describe it, but that's a great idea.
I know.
And I'll do the same. Maybe should I make a separate video of my song? I'm definitely going to tweet the lyrics. I'll do a Google link or whatever. Should I sing it too?
Yeah.
Maybe I will.
Yeah.
I'll be brave. All right. Enjoy your evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining.
Bye.